The moon hung over the Candy Kingdom like a watchful pearl, its pale light spilling across gumdrop towers and licorice streets. The air was soft, almost unreal, carrying a faint scent of melted sugar and lavender. Somewhere, wind chimes made of peppermint clicked together in the hush of night. It was peaceful, yet hollow, as though something was missing from the rhythm of the world. No one could quite remember the last time an adventure had begun. There were no echoes of laughter, no swords slashing through mystery, no bright-eyed boy chasing dawn across the meadows of Ooo. Finn the human, that name, once sung in stories and bedtime songs, had never come to be. The land had continued, of course. Grass still swayed, clouds still drifted, and the sun still painted its quiet gold upon the horizon. But the pulse that had once driven the world, the heartbeat of courage, the defiant spark that dared to save what was fragile, was silent. And so the Candy Kingdom waited, unknowingly, in a world unrescued. In this gentle divergence of time, Princess Bubblegum sat upon her balcony overlooking a garden of crystallized roses. Her eyes shimmered like pink glass in the moonlight, filled not with worry, but with something quieter, a loneliness that didn't know its name. She ruled, yes. Her people adored her. Science thrived. Order reigned. But there was no moment in which everything almost fell apart. And so, she had never learned the value of its saving. Without Finn, there had been no abduction by the Ice King, no daring rescue, no breathless reunion. There was only stability, measured and calm, a kingdom without chaos, without the unpredictable warmth of a boy who believed that every wrong could be righted by a swing of a sword and a shout of pure-hearted faith. And yet, if you stood in that silent garden long enough, you might have heard something faint, a hum like the echo of a forgotten melody. It wasn't a sound of this world exactly, more like the ghost of a possibility fluttering between the leaves. It was the dream of what could have been. A life unlived, a story unspun. A world that waited, not knowing what it waited for. In the absence of the hero, destinies began to bend differently. Jake the dog still lived beneath the great tree house that now stood empty. He spent his days napping beneath the sunlight, dreaming of adventures that never happened. Sometimes he awoke with his heart pounding, certain he had just been somewhere, beside someone, running through mountains of glass and shadow. But when he opened his eyes, there was only stillness and the quiet hum of bees. He did not know that his dreams were memories from another world. He did not know that his soul still remembered Finn, though his mind did not. For in some secret corner of reality, the spirit of companionship, that sacred thread that tied the two together, still shimmered faintly, like dust caught in a beam of light. Elsewhere, the Ice King wandered the frozen valleys of his domain, still lonely, still muttering to unseen friends. Without the push and pull of heroism against his madness, he had sunk deeper into his solitude. The world had not given him an enemy, and so it had not given him redemption. He spent years writing letters he would never send. Sometimes, when he looked into his ice mirrors, he thought he saw a boy's reflection. Blonde hair, blue eyes, fierce kindness standing behind him. But when he turned around, there was only wind and snow. The boy was never there. He never had been, and in the farthest reaches of Ooo, the elemental powers, flame, ice, candy, and slime, stirred uneasily. Balance had been kept for now, but not by harmony, rather by absence. Without the one who bridged the extremes, the human heart that dared to touch gods and monsters alike, the world had become strangely sterile, like a painting left unfinished. It is a curious thing, isn't it? To imagine a world where nothing goes wrong, yet nothing truly grows. where no hero rises because there is no peril to call them forth.
It is peace, yes, but the kind of peace that begins to echo against itself.
A silence too deep, too complete. If Finn had existed, he would have run barefoot through these meadows at dawn, shouting to the sky, his laughter shaking the dust off the old myths. He would have challenged dragons, befriended ghosts, and defied despair simply by believing in joy. But without him, these stories remained folded, still trapped within the realm of what if. The world, though beautiful, was asleep. And perhaps that is what this story is truly about. Not a tragedy, but a long dream. A dream of a hero who never came, yet whose shadow still brushed the edges of creation. Princess Bubblegum's nights grew long. Her experiments became more intricate, her logic sharper, her thoughts more distant. Without being saved, she never learned to need saving. And without needing, she forgot what it meant to feel small, to feel human. One night, standing before her observatory mirror, she whispered, "What am I missing?" The mirror did not answer, but for a brief, impossible moment, the reflection flickered, and she saw herself smiling beside a boy in a bear hat, both of them laughing as stars fell around them. Then the image was gone, leaving only her face, solemn and still. But something stirred in her chest, a memory of joy that had never been born. She looked up at the sky then and felt the weight of endless order pressing down. For the first time in her long rule, she wondered what would happen if she simply stopped planning, stopped perfecting, stopped controlling the threads of life as though she were the weaver of all things. The thought frightened her, and yet it also felt like freedom. There are moments in every universe, even in dreams, where time softens and possibility sighs through the cracks. And if one were listening closely that night, they might have heard the sound of a page turning, an unwritten page somewhere beyond the kingdoms and stars, in the quiet corridors between timelines. The being known as the cosmic owl stirred from its slumber. Its eyes, vast, endless, full of all dreams, opened slowly. It had seen countless realities unfold, each born from choice and chance. But this one was different. This was a world without its destined spark, a timeline where courage had not been kindled. And as the owl gazed into the tapestry of what never was, a single tear of starlight fell upon the void below, whispering a name that had never been spoken. In that moment, the dream world shivered softly, like a breath catching. The grasses bent as though a wind had passed, and in Jake's empty treehouse, a single leaf drifted down from the ceiling and landed on the old, unused sword that rested in the corner. It made the faintest sound, a ring, like the echo of a memory awakening. The world did not change yet, but something had begun, a flicker beneath still waters, a longing within still hearts. Perhaps the universe itself was remembering, piecing together the absence it could no longer bear. And so the kingdom of candy slept beneath its moonlight, unaware that the quiet peace it cherished was beginning to tremble.
Not in chaos, Mayor, but in yearning.
For every story, even the forgotten ones, seek to be told. Even dreams hunger for their heroes, and in the silence of the night, the world that waited began, ever so faintly, to dream of a boy it had never known, and a friendship that could have saved it all. The dawn came gently, as it always did. Golden mist curled through the treetops, brushing the sleepy branches of the old tree house that had long fallen into silence. Dust shimmered like faint spirits caught in a beam of light, and on the couch, made of patchwork pillows, Jake the dog stirred from another long and uneasy dream. He woke to the scent of dew and honey, his stretchy limbs curled beneath him like coiled vines. For a moment he didn't know where he was. The echo of laughter, warm and human, still rang faintly in his ears, though there was no one else in the room. He could almost hear a voice calling from far away.
Not by name,
but by feeling. That strange, wordless pull toward something lost. He blinked, looked around, and sighed. The treehouse was still as ever. Shelves cluttered with half-finished sketches, mismatched mugs, and a sword that had never been swung. Jake had built this place years ago, though he could never quite recall why. It had just felt right, like he was building for two. For someone who never arrived, outside the forest breathed. Sunlight dappled across the grass, and a slow breeze drifted by, carrying the faint hum of the world waking up. Jake stretched his arms, reaching until his paws brushed the ceiling, and muttered softly, "Weird dreams again?" Then he chuckled, though there was no joy in the sound. He had been dreaming of a boy, always the same boy, a face he couldn't place, but whose laughter made the world feel right. In the dreams, they ran together across strange lands, candy kingdoms, icy towers, and flaming mountains. The boy's sword glinted with light, and Jake's heart swelled with pride. He didn't know who that kid was, but when he woke, the emptiness that followed hurt in a way he couldn't explain. Dreams, he told himself, were just the mind's way of chewing old thoughts. But what if dreams were more? What if they were echoes? Whispers from the versions of ourselves that existed somewhere else? Jake didn't know. He only knew that each time he dreamed of the boy, the world felt more fragile when he woke. As morning deepened, Jake wandered through the woods. He passed the pond where the reflections shimmered slightly too slow, as if time here didn't quite trust itself. He passed the hills shaped like sleeping giants, their mossy backs rising and falling with the rhythm of the wind. And as he walked, he hummed a tune, one he didn't remember learning. It was a song of adventure, though he couldn't have said why he knew that. Something about the melody felt old, like it belonged to a story told by firelight. As he hummed, the birds began to join in, echoing the tune in little chirps, and the air around him seemed to thrum with recognition. For a fleeting instant, the forest shimmered, every color deepening, the trees bending slightly toward him.
and then just as suddenly it was gone.
The world snapped back to its quiet, ordinary rhythm. Jake froze. He looked down at his paws, flexed them, and whispered, "What was that?" But the forest gave no answer, only the sighing wind, brushing against leaves that seemed to remember something they could not say. There was an ancient place not far from there, a grove that legends said had existed before Ooo itself was born. Few visited it, for it was neither inviting nor forbidding. It was simply there, like a thought the world had forgotten how to finish. Jake found himself wandering toward it that afternoon, pulled by something he couldn't name. The air within the grove was thick and still. Every sound seemed hushed, like the world was holding its breath. At the center stood a cracked stone pedestal, overgrown with moss and tiny white flowers, and resting upon it was something small, a golden coin, old and dulled by time. Jake reached for it. As his paw brushed the metal, a ripple of light spread through the grove, silent and soft. The air trembled, and suddenly he wasn't standing in the grove anymore. He was in a dream again, but this time it felt too real to be sleep. He stood beside the boy from his dreams. The boy's face was clear now, wide-eyed, full of courage, a smile that burned away the gloom. They were running side by side, their laughter ringing across the sky. Jake's heart swelled, not with confusion, but with recognition. This wasn't a stranger. This was his brother, his best friend.
"His other half, Finn," he whispered.
The name came out before he could think, and when he said it, the dream trembled. as though the very fabric of the world had turned to listen. The boy looked at him then, eyes full of stars.
"Hey, buddy," he said, voice full of warmth.
"You found me?" And then the dream collapsed. Jake gasped awake back in the grove. The coin in his paw glowed faintly before fading, leaving only the impression of something infinite pressed into his memory. He sat there trembling, not with fear, but with awe. "Finn," he whispered again, testing the sound. It felt sacred, like a secret being spoken back into existence. For the first time in his life, Jake felt sure of something he couldn't explain. There was someone missing from this world. Someone meant to be here. Someone who had been here once in another kind of reality.
He didn't know how he knew.
He only knew that the world wasn't complete without that laughter, that bravery, that heart. The realization filled him with a quiet sadness.
But also with purpose.
If the dream could show him what once was, perhaps it could also guide him toward what could be again. He returned to the treehouse that night, the sky above turning a soft violet. The moon was high and silver, and fireflies drifted through the windows like gentle sparks of memory. Jake lit a candle, placed the coin on the table, and whispered, "If you're out there, little dude."
"I'll find you." The flame flickered, as though it had heard.
For just a heartbeat, its light cast two shadows upon the wall, one of a dog and one of a boy. Then it steadied again, and there was only Jake, sitting quietly in the glow. As he drifted to sleep, he dreamed once more. But this dream was calmer, slower, like a memory unfolding underwater. He saw a vast sea of stars, each one a story. Some shone bright with destiny, others flickered faintly, forgotten by time. And among them he saw one star pulsing softly, as if waiting for its name to be remembered. He reached for it. When his paw brushed the light, warmth spread through him. The warmth of friendship, of laughter, of shared courage. He smiled in his sleep. He didn't know how or when or where, but deep in his heart, he knew the story wasn't over. It was only sleeping, and perhaps by dreaming of it he had already begun to wake it. Outside the window, the night wind passed gently through the leaves. In the Candy Kingdom far away, Princess Bubblegum looked up from her work, frowning faintly,
Sensing something, a tremor in the air.
like the distant echo of a heartbeat returning to the world. She did not know it yet, but Jake's dream had reached her, and soon her perfectly ordered kingdom would begin to unravel in the most beautiful way. The Candy Kingdom never truly slept. Even in the deepest hours of the night, something always hummed. The rhythmic purr of sugar engines, the whisper of caramel winds along the towers, the soft sigh of glass instruments cooling in laboratories of pink light. It was a world that shimmered eternal and serene. And yet, lately, Princess Bubblegum had begun to hear a silence inside the hum. It began as a faint ache behind her thoughts, a small, persistent question she couldn't quite identify. She worked as she always did, perfecting formulas, refining defenses, ensuring every citizen's sweetness ratio remained within optimal bounds. But between the lines of logic, she felt it, a flicker of unreason, a sense that she had forgotten something important, something alive. One evening, while overseeing a new experiment in her observatory, she paused. The beakers bubbled in steady rhythm. The air smelled of mint and ozone. All was precise, controlled. Yet her gaze drifted to the far window, the one overlooking the distant tree line, and she felt a tug deep in her chest. "Why do I always look there?" she whispered. Her voice sounded strange in the room, softer, almost unsure. She stared into the darkness beyond her kingdom, where the wild lands of Ooo stretched endlessly. Green hills under starlight, unseen creatures whispering to the moon. The world beyond her walls was supposed to be irrelevant, predictable chaos. Yet she could not stop thinking about it, about the feeling that something important was waiting out there. Or perhaps someone. That night, when she finally retired to her chamber, she could not sleep. She sat beside the window, bathed in silver light, and let her mind wander in ways it never had before. The scent of vanilla flowers drifted through the air. Outside, the clouds were slow-moving ships upon a dark sea. Her mind traced equations and timelines, the formation of the kingdom, the cycles of decay and renewal. Yet no matter how she arranged the logic, she found a gap, a missing variable. She rose, restless, and crossed to her mirror. The reflection was perfect, as always, composed, rational, unwavering. But when she leaned closer, she thought she saw something flicker beneath the surface, a glint of gold, a flash of blue eyes, a smile that didn't belong to her. The mirror stilled, and the image was gone. But her heart was racing. The sound startled her. That pounding, erratic thing she hadn't noticed in years. She touched her chest and whispered, "What are you remembering?" And for the first time in all her measured life, the princess felt fear. Not of danger, but of truth. Over the following days, the feeling grew. Her dreams, once purely mathematical, began to bloom with color and sound. She saw flashes of a boy leaping through forests, his laughter bright enough to break the clouds. A dog made of sunlight stretching across the sky. A battle fought not for conquest, but for love. She would wake from these visions trembling, her sheets tangled, her mind a whirl of impossible longing. She began sketching what she saw. Quick, impulsive lines that made no sense. When Peppermint Butler found her one morning surrounded by drawings of a blond boy with a hat shaped like bear ears, she simply told him it was a theoretical construct. But when he left, she stared at the paper for a long time, her eyes glistening. Something in her knew that he was real, that he had once stood where she stood, that the world itself had once turned differently around his presence. She wandered the halls of her castle, tracing her fingers along the cool, candy walls. Every color, every shimmer seemed too neat now, too untouched.
What was perfection without chance?
What was peace without the possibility of chaos? She remembered the scientific law she had written long ago. Entropy is the soul's reminder that creation breathes. And suddenly she wondered if she had been wrong to remove it from her archives. Had she, in her quest for stability, strangled the very pulse that made life worth saving? That evening, she returned to her balcony, the same one where we found her in the first chapter. But the moon seemed different now, fuller somehow, as if it had been listening. The gardens below glowed faintly, petals reflecting her uncertainty in their crystalline edges. She closed her eyes and let the night wind brush her face. It smelled faintly of pine, of earth.
Of adventure. Somewhere, far away, the trees rustled, and for a brief moment she heard laughter, faint, echoing, real. Her eyes opened.
"Who's there?" she called softly, but only the wind answered. Still, she could not shake the certainty that she had not imagined it. And for the first time in her long rule, she considered leaving the safety of her kingdom's walls. She went to the royal archives, dusted and cold. Thousands of scrolls, each cataloguing a perfect history of the Candy Kingdom, lined the shelves.
No surprises, no miracles.
Every triumph engineered, every sorrow sterilized. But as she traced the spines of those old records, she found one she didn't recognize. The parchment was older than the rest, its seal faded. She opened it and gasped. Inside were sketches and notes she had never written, a record of something impossible, the human boy who saved the princess. Her hands trembled. The words blurred in her vision as if resisting her recognition. She turned the pages, drawings of a boy with a sword, standing before her castle gates, a dog at his side, an inscription beneath one image that read, "He promised to keep her safe, even from herself." Tears welled in her eyes. They tasted of salt, not sugar.
Real tears. It was then that she understood, or began to.
There was a world that had been rewritten, a timeline that had been erased, and yet its echoes still lingered within her, like starlight long after the star itself had died. If such a world had existed once, then perhaps it still existed somewhere. If there had been a boy who saved her, then perhaps he was still trying to, even now through dreams and whispers. She pressed a trembling hand to the parchment, and for a moment the ink shimmered with faint light, as though acknowledging her. And somewhere beyond space and time, in his sleep, Jake stirred. Their souls brushed lightly across the veil of forgotten memory. The beginning of remembrance. The next morning, the princess summoned no council, no guards. She donned a simple cloak and stepped quietly through the palace gates. The guards bowed, assuming she was on some routine experiment beyond the walls. But her path was not planned. For once, she walked without a destination. Outside the walls, the grass bent under her feet, soft and damp with dew. The air was different, raw, unmeasured, free. She breathed deeply, and the sensation was dizzying. As she wandered into the forest, the colors grew deeper, the air thicker. The world outside her kingdom was alive in ways her mind could not quantify. The hum of insects, the rush of unseen rivers, the heartbeat of wild things, and in that living noise, she began to hear it again, laughter, quick and bright, skipping across the wind like a pebble over water. It wasn't cruel or mocking, it was joyful, a sound that made her chest ache with recognition. She followed it. Every step carried her deeper into the unknown, and yet she felt no fear.
Only longing.
Only the strange hope that somewhere, somehow, she would find the source of the voice that had been haunting her dreams. The forest opened into a glade, quiet, golden, still. At its center stood a mossy pedestal, cracked and half swallowed by vines, and resting upon it was a small golden coin, dulled by time. She reached out, but paused. Something about it pulsed softly as if waiting. Her hand hovered over it, trembling. She whispered, "Who are you?" And in that moment, across the miles, Jake woke suddenly in his treehouse, the same golden coin in his paw, the same pulse beneath his touch. The world shivered between them, not violently, but tenderly, like the space between heartbeats. And for the briefest instant, they both heard a voice, carried by wind and dream alike. "Keep going," the sound faded, leaving only stillness. But for the first time in her long and perfectly ordered life, Princess Bubblegum smiled. Not with triumph, not with logic, but with faith. She turned toward the horizon, where dawn was breaking in slow waves of pink and gold, and she whispered into the wind, "I think I'm starting to remember." It began with the stars. One by one they trembled, softly, like drops of dew struck by a faint wind. The night above Ooo rippled, not violently, but tenderly, as if something vast and long sleeping were turning in its rest. The cosmic owl opened his eyes. They were oceans of gold, spinning with forgotten dreams. He had seen countless worlds, each branching from choices both grand and small, each shaped by the courage or silence of the hearts within them. But this one was different. This world had a missing note in its melody, a song without its chorus, a sky that hummed but never soared. He looked down upon Ooo, at the Candy Kingdom wrapped in twilight order, at the empty meadows where laughter once should have echoed, and at the lonely treehouse where Jake lay half awake, dreaming of someone who never came. And the owl whispered, "It is time to remember." Dreams began to shift that night. All across Ooo, sleepers stirred. The Fire Kingdom's flames flickered in strange rhythms. The Ice King muttered names he didn't know. Even the Nightosphere paused in its eternal churning. The sky itself had become porous, and through it seeped fragments of something ancient. Light, sound, emotion. Remnants of a story the world had once known but had chosen to forget. And somewhere in that vast dreaming,
A spark began to form. Jake dreamed again.
but this time the dream was different. He stood in a field under a violet sky, and from the horizon came a faint glimmer, a figure walking slowly toward him. The air was thick with starlight, each blade of grass humming like a harp string beneath his feet. He could feel his heartbeat, steady and full, echoing in time with something vast and kind beyond the clouds. The figure grew clearer, a boy in a bear hat, carrying a sword that shimmered with morning light. Jake's throat tightened. "Finn," he called. The boy looked up and smiled. That smile. It was like the sunrise itself had decided to take human shape. Pure, unguarded, bright enough to chase shadows from the deepest corners of the heart. "I knew you'd remember me," the boy said. His voice was soft, but the air trembled with it. Jake reached out, tears forming in his eyes. "I never forgot, man," he said. "I just didn't know I had." They stood there for a long time, the dream wind moving through them like music. No explanations, no logic, only recognition and the quiet ache of reunion. Then Finn turned his gaze upward. The stars above were swirling now, forming patterns, rivers of light converging upon a single, glowing thread that reached down toward them. "What's happening?" Jake asked. Finn smiled again, though his eyes were distant. "The world's remembering, but it needs help." He placed a hand on Jake's shoulder, and Jake felt warmth, not heat, but something deeper, a memory of all they had done and all they had meant to each other. "Tell her I'm real," Finn whispered. Then the dream dissolved. Jake woke with a start. Morning light spilled across the floor. He felt the weight of the golden coin still in his paw, only now it pulsed faintly, as though it contained a heartbeat. He didn't need to think. He knew exactly where to go. At that same hour, Princess Bubblegum stood upon her balcony, sleepless again. The sky above her kingdom shimmered faintly. The stars not twinkling, but breathing. She could feel it, the universe whispering to her through her bones. Her dreams had grown vivid, memories of battles she never fought,
Of tears she never cried, of joy she had never allowed herself to feel. She saw a boy standing before her.
his sword drawn not in defiance but in hope. She saw him kneel after victory, handing her a single flower plucked from the battlefield, and she heard his voice, gentle, awkward, sincere. "You don't have to be alone anymore, Princess." She had never heard that voice in waking life, yet it filled her with unbearable tenderness, a grief for something unnamed. That morning, she gathered her cloak and followed the path she had taken the day before, through the outer gates, through the wild forest that brushed against the kingdom's borders. Each step felt lighter now, as though the air itself was helping her move forward, and as she walked, the hum of the world around her began to shift. The insects' songs wove into melodies. The trees seemed to lean closer, whispering through their leaves. The river nearby glowed faintly with color. The whole world was beginning to dream, and she, for the first time, was awake within it. The cosmic owl drifted above, wings vast and silent. He watched the princess walking beneath him, and he spoke softly to the stars. "The story begins to mend," he murmured, "but the thread is fragile. They must find the heart of the dream, or it will fade again into stillness." The stars answered, their light pulsing like the beat of a distant drum. The dream was not merely memory now, it was will. the will of a world longing to be whole. Far away, in the dark depths of the Ice Kingdom, Simon, the man trapped behind the Ice King's crown, looked up from his solitude. He felt it too.
A soft warmth beneath the cold.
A sense that forgiveness, for himself, for the world, might still exist. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in decades he dreamed not of madness, but of sunlight on snow. By twilight, Princess Bubblegum reached the glade again. The golden coin still rested on its pedestal, glowing faintly in the dimming light. This time, she didn't hesitate. She placed her palm upon it. Instantly, her surroundings blurred. Colors melted into one another, and the ground fell away beneath her feet. She was floating in a sea of starlight, weightless, endless. Before her stood the cosmic owl, vast and radiant. She did not speak. She only stared, awed and small before his gaze. "You are awake in the dream," the owl said, his voice both near and everywhere. "What is this?" She whispered. "Remembrance," he replied. "The world remembers what you do not. The boy, the friendship, the choice."
The sacrifice. Her eyes widened.
Who was he? The owl's wings folded, and in the darkness between them, an image appeared. A boy standing on a hill, his sword raised toward the dawn, his heart wide open to all that was beautiful and doomed. "He was the balance," said the owl, "the courage that made your order mean something. Without him you built a world without risk, and without risk there can be no love." Tears welled in her eyes.
I think...
"I remember his laughter." "Yes," the owl said softly. "He loved you enough to risk everything, even existence. And when the timelines shifted, he was lost between them. But love," the owl's gaze brightened, "is a form of gravity. It pulls even forgotten souls back toward each other." She felt warmth spreading through her chest. Not pain, but recognition. Finn! The name appeared in her mind like a star, flaring back to life. "Where is he?" she asked. "Between," said the owl, "between dream and waking, between memory and hope. But he stirs now because you do," she nodded, trembling.
I have to find him. The owl's eyes softened.
"You already are." And with that, the dream began to dissolve into starlight. She woke in the glade. The coin was gone, but the night around her pulsed with life, the fireflies brighter, the wind full of distant laughter, and somewhere, far away, Jake stood at the edge of the forest, feeling the same pull, the same echo. Their paths were converging, two halves of a world beginning to awaken from the longest sleep. Above them, the cosmic owl closed his eyes again. The dream would continue, but the next steps were theirs. The sky shimmered, and across the horizon, the faintest sound of a flute carried on the wind, a melody both new and ancient, calling them toward what was yet to come. It began with a flicker, a single light trembling in the dark, like the pulse of a newborn star, and from that light, a breath, soft, uncertain, yet filled with the will to exist. The void around it was endless, a sea of liquid shadow that shimmered faintly with lost memories. Fragments drifted by, echoes of laughter, glints of metal, a glimpse of a hand reaching out to another under the golden hue of sunset. Somewhere, deep within that vast ocean of nothing, a shape began to form. First, a silhouette, then the faint curve of a smile, and then the slow flutter of eyes opening for the first time, or perhaps the 1,000th. He did not remember his name. He only knew he was awake. He floated there, surrounded by constellations that swam through him like fish in a dark current. When he moved, the stars moved with him, bending gently around his form. His hands looked translucent, half light and half memory. The boy raised one and whispered, "Who am I?" The void did not answer. But something far away stirred, a vibration like a bell echoing through glass. He began to walk, though there was no ground to walk upon. Each step sent ripples through the darkness, revealing flashes of a world that once had been. A sprawling candy kingdom glinting beneath the sun, a laughing dog made of living magic, a sword glistening with reflected clouds. They vanished as soon as they appeared, but each vision left behind a trace of feeling, courage, warmth, companionship. He clutched at his chest. It ached, though he could find no wound.
Only a hollow, as though something had been taken from him, long ago, something irreplaceable. In the realm beyond dreams, the cosmic owl observed.
His golden gaze followed the boy's faint figure drifting through the between place. "The tether reforms," the owl murmured. "The world remembers him now, and so he begins to remember himself." He spread his wings, each feather shimmering with fragments of timelines, and whispered to the stars that served as his kin, "Guide him to the place where longing meets remembrance. For only through memory can he awaken." And so the stars moved. One by one, they bent their light downward, forming a bridge of silver luminescence that stretched across the void. The boy felt the pull of it, deep in his chest, a rhythm like a heartbeat echoing from beyond the horizon. He began to walk across that starlit path. As he walked, he began to hear things, faint, almost inaudible at first.
Laughter carried on the wind. A voice saying his name, a name that felt like home. Finn, the sound struck something within him.
His heart stuttered, then steadied. He whispered the name aloud, and it felt right. He clung to it as one would to a rope in a storm.
"I'm Finn," he said again, louder this time, and as he spoke it, his form grew more solid.
His clothes returned, the soft blue shirt, the worn backpack, the sword at his side. He could feel the ground beneath his feet again, grass, cool and damp with dew. The void had become a meadow now, lit by eternal twilight. He looked around, breathing hard, and for the first time, the boy between worlds began to remember what it meant to be alive. A soft wind moved through the grass, carrying the scent of sugar and rain. Far ahead, a faint figure waited, tall, luminous, her face hidden by the glow surrounding her. Finn felt drawn to her. Each step closer, his chest burned with familiarity. He didn't know why, but he loved her. Not the way one loves a story or a dream, but with the ache of something lost, something once real. As he approached, her voice filled the air like chimes in water. "You are not supposed to be here," she said, gently. Her tone was kind, yet filled with sorrow. Finn stopped. "Where is here?" "The place between," she answered. "Between memory and creation. Between what is and what could still be." Her light dimmed slightly, and for the first time he could see her face, Princess Bubblegum, though not as he remembered her. Her eyes were softer, almost uncertain. Her expression, full of longing. "You know me," Finn said, hope in his voice. "You remember me?" Her gaze trembled.
"I remember something, a voice."
"A promise." He stepped closer, reaching out, but she began to fade, her edges dissolving into starlight. "Wait," he called. Her last words came as a whisper. "Find Jake. He remembers the way." Then she was gone, and Finn stood alone once more, the meadows stretching endlessly before him. Back in the waking world, Jake wandered through the forest. He followed the strange, rhythmic hum that had begun to fill the air since his dream. It wasn't quite music, but it pulled him forward all the same, like the scent of an old memory long buried. He stopped by a pond, still and perfectly round. The surface reflected the moon, but as he gazed deeper, the reflection rippled, and for a brief moment he saw Finn's face staring back at him. Jake's heart leapt
Finn, buddy, that you?
The reflection blinked, not as a trick of light, but as though it truly heard him. Then the voice came, distant, yet real. Jake, follow the stars. The surface stilled, leaving only Jake's trembling reflection and the whisper of wind in the reeds. He stared up at the night sky. The constellations were shifting, not randomly, but forming a pattern, a path, and in his chest the coin he carried began to glow once more, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. He knew what he had to do. He set off into the darkness, toward the mountains at the world's edge, where sky and earth met in silence. Meanwhile, Finn wandered across the starlit meadow,
Unsure how much time had passed. If time even existed here.
He felt the ache of distance, of being close to the world yet unable to touch it. He would sometimes see faint silhouettes in the distance, shapes that flickered like candle flames. One moment a friend laughing, the next gone. He began to wonder if he was meant to walk this road forever. A ghost, remembering life but never living it again, Oz. Then one evening, he came upon a hill. At its crest stood a single tree, ancient and wide, its branches hung with glowing fruits that shimmered like small moons. He sat beneath it, laying his sword beside him. The air was thick with fragrance, a blend of wild honey, smoke, and rain. For the first time since awakening, Finn let himself rest. He closed his eyes and thought of laughter, Jake's laughter, and of the warm, golden light of the Candy Kingdom at sunset. He thought of the adventure, the chaos, the joy, and somewhere deep within he whispered, "I want to go home." The words stirred the wind. The stars above brightened, and the ground beneath him began to hum. A voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Home is not a place, young hero. It is the moment when what you love remembers you back. Finn looked up, startled. Standing before him was the cosmic owl, vast and radiant, his feathers trailing rivers of starlight. "You've walked far," said the owl, "but your path is only half. To return you must be remembered fully." Finn frowned. "By who?" "By the one who mourned without knowing she mourned," said the owl, "and by the one who dreams of you still." "Jake," Finn whispered. The owl nodded. "Follow the music of the stars. He follows it too." Then with a beat of wings the cosmic owl was gone, leaving only a swirl of golden dust drifting into the air. Finn rose to his feet, his heart steady and full. For the first time he felt no fear, only purpose. He lifted his sword, and the stars themselves seemed to shift in answer, forming a bridge of light leading forward through the void. He began to walk again, and this time he knew exactly who he was walking toward. Pause. Above the sky shimmered. In the waking world, Jake saw it too. A falling star tracing a golden arc across the night. He smiled faintly, his heart swelling with recognition.
"Hang tight, buddy," he whispered. "I'm coming." It began as a tremor in the stillness.
The stars above Ooo flickered in strange unison, their rhythm no longer celestial, but alive. Somewhere beneath that trembling dome of sky, two hearts, once bound, then severed by time, began to beat in sync again. The wind carried whispers through the trees, soft as silk, slow as the turning of an ancient wheel. The grass bent toward the east, toward the mountains where Jake's steady feet pressed onward through the night. And high above, in the between, Finn followed the trail of starlight laid before him, each step pulsing in rhythm with his brothers. They were walking toward each other, though neither could yet see the other's world. Between them, reality was beginning to thin, a film of glass ready to shatter at a single touch. Pause. Jake trudged through the forest, the earth soft beneath his paws. He'd been walking for hours, but something, a melody, faint but constant, pulled him forward. It wasn't a tune he recognized, yet it filled him with aching familiarity, as though he had once hummed it beside a campfire long ago. He reached a clearing at the forest's edge, where the sky unfolded into a vast expanse of stars. The air shimmered faintly as if he had stepped into the reflection of the world rather than the world itself. In the center of the clearing lay a pool, perfectly still, perfectly round. He approached and knelt beside it. The surface showed not his reflection, but another world entirely, rolling meadows beneath a lavender sky, a lone boy walking beneath a tree of silver fruit. Jake's breath caught in his throat. "Finn," he whispered. In the mirrored meadow, Finn paused. He looked up, straight at Jake, and for a heartbeat, the two worlds met. Finn took a step closer. He could see Jake's face, clear and bright as the morning. His heart leapt. "Jake!"
You can see me?
Jake blinked, hardly daring to breathe.
Yeah, man, I can see you. You're glowing or something.
Finn laughed, the sound soft and radiant. He reached toward the surface. Jake did the same. Their fingertips brushed, and the pool rippled violently. A rush of wind howled through both worlds, and for an instant, the boundary between dream and waking dissolved. Finn stumbled forward and fell straight into Jake's arms. The air shimmered, the stars bent, and the night held its breath. Pause. For a long time, neither spoke. They just held each other, their hearts pounding with disbelief and relief. Finn's voice broke first, rough from silence and tears.
Dude, I thought I was gone. Jake squeezed him tighter.
"You kinda were, but you came back." He pulled away to look at him, grinning.
You look...
"Ghosty," Finn laughed weakly. "Guess I'm still catching up to being alive," Jake chuckled. "Well, you better hurry up, bro. We got a lot to talk about." They sat beside the pool, watching the stars drift lazily above. The world around them was strange, half dream, half real. The trees shimmered at their edges. The ground beneath them pulsed faintly like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. Jake tossed a pebble into the pool. It didn't sink. It floated, spinning slowly, then vanished upward into the sky. "Okay," Jake said softly.
That's new, Finn smiled faintly.
"The worlds are overlapping."
The owl said this would happen. The owl?
"Yeah." Finn looked up at the constellations. He said the universe is remembering. That everything that was lost is being called back. Jake nodded thoughtfully. "Sounds about right."
I've been feeling weird lately. Like the air's heavier.
Like it knows something's missing. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the hum of the world rebuilding itself. Crickets sang, leaves rustled, and somewhere far away, the faint ringing of a bell echoed across both worlds. Far above them, the cosmic owl hovered on a wind of gold dust. He watched the brothers with quiet satisfaction, his eyes reflecting the glow of both dream and waking. "The heart has reunited," he murmured to the stars. "But unity brings consequence. When two worlds meet, one must change, or both shall break." The stars pulsed in soft agreement. Below, unseen by Finn and Jake, the forest floor began to twist subtly. Roots glowed.
Rocks hummed.
The dream was spreading, and the waking world was absorbing it. Pause. Meanwhile, in the Candy Kingdom, Princess Bubblegum felt the change. She stood at her laboratory window, the moon casting faint ribbons of light across her instruments. Her machines pulsed in strange patterns, energy signatures she could not explain. Each reading whispered of quantum instability, of time loops folding back on themselves, of matter remembering forms it had once taken and lost. She touched the glass and whispered, "Finn." And though she did not know why, she felt tears gather behind her eyes. Her chest tightened with a name she had not spoken aloud in years. The world itself seemed to hum in answer, and for a fleeting moment she thought she saw a boy's reflection standing behind her in the window. Back in the forest, Finn and Jake rested beneath the glowing canopy. Fireflies drifted like floating stars, and the gentle chorus of nighttime filled the air. Finn turned his gaze upward.
You ever wonder if we were meant to forget?
Jake looked puzzled. Forget what?
Everything, Finn said softly.
All of it. The adventures, the chaos, the love. Maybe the world got too heavy and we had to start over. Jake tilted his head, thinking.
Maybe, but you know what? I don't think we were supposed to stay forgotten. Finn smiled faintly.
Yeah? Feels like waking up from a dream you didn't know you were in. Exactly, Jake said. Like the kind of dream that keeps humming in your bones even after you open your eyes. The two sat in silence, their breaths syncing with the slow rhythm of the night. After a while, Finn said quietly, "She's remembering too?" PB?
Yeah, I felt it.
When I was in the between.
Her voice reached me. Jake raised an eyebrow.
So what now, man? You gonna go find her? Finn looked down at his hands. Solid now, no longer transparent. He clenched them, feeling strength returning. Yeah, he whispered.
I think I have to.
Not because she needs saving, but because I do. Jake chuckled softly. Then I'm with you, always. Pause. The stars shifted above them. The light grew thicker, warmer. In the distance, the faint silhouette of the Candy Kingdom shimmered. Half real, half reflection, as though it existed in both worlds at once. Finn stood. Jake followed. The wind brushed through the trees, carrying with it the faintest trace of music, a melody of bells and laughter, a song once sung by heroes beneath a bright and fearless sky. The forest parted before them like curtains, revealing the path to the kingdom beyond, and, for the first time in forever, they began to walk home. Far away, the cosmic owl spread his wings. The threads of fate glowed brighter now, 3 lights weaving toward a single point of reunion. But deep beneath the earth, in the shadows between dream and death, something ancient stirred, something that remembered the old chaos and did not wish to see the world reborn. The owl turned his golden eyes toward that distant dark and whispered, "The balance must be kept. Even love has its echo." As dawn approached, Finn and Jake reached the borders of the Candy Kingdom. The walls shimmered, each brick half candy, half light. When Finn touched one, memories rushed through him of battles fought, of laughter shared, of promises made beneath fireworks. He withdrew his hand, trembling. Jake placed a paw on his shoulder. "You ready?" Finn smiled, weary but sure. "Yeah, it's time." And together they stepped through the veil. The moment they did, the world shifted. Dream became waking, and waking became dream. The sky blazed with colors unseen. The air tasted of honey and ozone, and the sound of countless forgotten songs rose like a tide through the streets of the Candy Kingdom. Every candy citizen paused, their eyes glowing faintly with recognition, as though they too were waking from the same long sleep. The night is hushed, but not empty. Pause. The land between dreams hums with faint starlight, and the trees whisper as though they are recalling forgotten words. Finn walks a quiet road paved in pages in the parchment of tales never told. Around him, spectral letters drift like fireflies, each glowing softly with a voice that almost became. The air smells faintly of ink and rain-soaked paper, and the wind carries 1,000 stories that never found their endings. He pauses beside a fountain carved from quills and stone. Its water runs clear as glass, reflecting scenes of what might have been. Adventures cut short, promises never made, and friendships never born. It is here, in this strange kingdom, that Finn comes to understand the true cost of his absence from Bubblegum's rescue. It is not merely the silence of a broken land, but the silence of imagination itself, the hollow where dreams used to grow. He kneels beside the fountain, dipping his hand into the mirrored water. The ripples bloom outward, revealing ghostly scenes, a village that never rejoiced, a sky that never cleared after the rain, a melody that was never sung. "What is the worth of a story untold?" he murmurs, his reflection bending into shapes not his own. The echo that answers him is soft, almost maternal. It depends on who needed to hear it, Geese. The kingdom of unwritten stories stretches far beyond what the eye can see. Libraries made of light, forests woven from parchment leaves, rivers that shimmer with unfinished sentences. It is a place where imagination waits for a spark, a breath, a beginning. But in this version of Ooo, the spark has dimmed. Without Finn's daring heart to kindle adventure, many tales were never born at all. He wanders through the hall of forgotten heroes, a place of solemn grandeur, filled with marble figures frozen mid-step. Each one represents a story that could have existed, a candy soldier who dreamed of peace, a flame who longed to learn to dance with the rain, a beast who sought forgiveness instead of fame. Finn touches the cold marble and feels warmth flicker beneath it, like a heartbeat waiting for someone to remember it into being. As he walks deeper, he begins to see echoes of himself. In one corner stands a statue labeled only the boy who never left the meadow. In another, the hero who chose silence. And further still, one half-finished figure whose face is a blur of possibility, as though the sculptor gave up before deciding who Finn truly was. He stops before that one. The air around it feels heavier, as though the unspoken words here have gravity.
"Is this what I become?" he asks quietly. A half-shaped story.
The statue does not answer, but the pages underfoot rustle, a soft sigh of understanding. Pause. Philosophers say that every world, even one of candy and dreams, exists because it is being imagined. That to stop believing, to stop telling, is to let it dissolve into the void. Finn begins to grasp the aching truth, that the world he walks through now is unraveling, not because of evil or neglect, but because of silence. The act of storytelling, of bravery, of reaching out to another soul. These were the threads that held reality together. He looks upward to where constellations shimmer like ink spilled across the heavens. Each star blinks in rhythm with a story being told somewhere else. Stories that did happen. But above Ooo, the stars are dim, the patterns incomplete. Finn realizes that somewhere, someone stopped dreaming of him. He closes his eyes and lets the wind move through his hair. "Maybe," he whispers, "stories need to be rescued too." Pause. In the stillness, a faint melody begins to drift, a lullaby sung by unseen voices. It is not sad exactly, but deeply tender. The words are half lost, half remembered. Every ending waits for courage, every silence waits for song. The notes weave through the air, illuminating the pages around him. For a moment the world feels alive again. The ink glows, the parchment trees sigh. A single petal cut from a sentence fragment flutters down and lands on his shoulder. He follows the music through winding corridors of script and parchment until he finds an ancient library. Its shelves, spiraling toward infinity. At the center, a desk sits beneath a pool of moonlight. Upon it rests an unfinished book bound in silver thread. The title reads, "The Tale of the Hero Who Slept." He opens it, and the pages breathe, literally exhaling a cool mist of dreamlight. Inside he sees his own life rewritten in soft, uncertain ink. Not as a hero, but as a wanderer, a listener, a keeper of quiet stories. The more he reads, the calmer he feels. This version of him never fought monsters or saved kingdoms, yet somehow still mattered. He brought peace simply by being present, by listening to the tales others could not tell aloud. Finn smiles faintly. Maybe the universe always finds a way to keep the flame alive, even when the torchbearer falters. And then, as if in response to his thought, the library begins to shimmer. Shelves fade, walls ripple, and the sky folds into itself. The kingdom of unwritten stories starts to vanish, not into darkness, but into completion. Each book closes softly, as though being tucked into the dreams of another world. Finn realizes what is happening. His mere act of remembering them, of witnessing them, has given them form. He has, in his quiet way, saved them. He places the silver-bound book gently back on the desk and watches as the moonlight absorbs it completely. "Good night," he whispers to the stories. "May you find your way to someone's dream." And as the last words fade, he feels himself lifted again. The ground falling away, the ink dissolving into stars. Somewhere far away, a faint warmth stirs in the heart of the Candy Kingdom. A whisper of color returns to its towers. Perhaps even across timelines, some echoes never truly die. Finn breathes deeply. The air now carries the scent of sugar and rain again. A gentle hope begins to rise within him. Fragile, but real. He closes his eyes, hearing only the steady rhythm of his breath and the quiet hum of stories finally finding their ending. Pause. For the first time since his long wandering began, he does not feel lost, only resting between pages, and so ends the kingdom of unwritten stories. Tomorrow, he will wake beneath a different sky. The sky above Ooo is neither dark nor light. A hushed grey that feels like the breath held between dream and awakening. Pause. The horizon lies blurred, as though the world itself is uncertain whether to sleep or rise. Finn stands on a hill of soft moss, watching the place where dawn should be. The sun does not rise here, not anymore. The air smells faintly of honeyed dust and the remnants of starlight. The birds, if they still exist in this echo of a world, have long since forgotten their songs. He takes a slow breath. The world exhales with him. For a moment, it feels like the stillness has a pulse. Faint, patient, eternal. Somewhere below, the Candy Kingdom slumbers beneath glassy silence. The gumdrop towers are dulled and pale, the caramel rivers motionless like mirrors. The castle stands untouched yet empty, its spires leaning toward the horizon as though pleading for color. This, Finn realizes, is a world forever caught between moments, a place waiting for something that never came. The dawn that never arrived, as he kneels in the grass, touching the dew that never dries. It clings to his fingers like tears that have forgotten who shed them. The ground beneath feels weary, not dead, but exhausted, as if creation itself had grown tired of waiting for its hero to return. "What if I was never meant to save her?" Finn whispers to no one. His voice trembles slightly, half in guilt, half in wonder.
What if she was meant to save me?
The wind responds with a sigh that drifts through the sugar fields. It smells of rosewater and smoke, the memory of a kingdom once alive with laughter. And within that sigh comes a faint echo of a voice. regal, kind, and ever curious. You always think the world needs fixing, Finn, but sometimes it only needs to be seen. Princess Bubblegum's words, or perhaps just the world remembering her tone. He can't be sure. He looks toward the castle and imagines her standing at the balcony, watching the horizon with quiet determination. In this timeline, she never met him, never learned from his reckless kindness, never balanced her logic with warmth. Without him, her kingdom endured, cold, efficient, unfeeling. A perfect world without heart. And that, Finn realizes, is why dawn never came. Pete's light is not merely the rising of the sun. It is the recognition of another's warmth. It is a conversation between worlds, between souls. When one stops reaching, the other stops shining. Without Finn's small, messy courage, the sun simply forgot where to look. He rises to his feet, watching the muted clouds drift in languid spirals. Maybe the world doesn't need a hero, he says softly, but it needs a heartbeat. The grass stirs faintly at his feet. As though agreeing, in the distance, faint colors begin to shimmer, not gold or rose, but soft shades of violet and silver. The light of possibility, the kind of light that appears not when dawn breaks, but when someone begins to believe again. Finn starts to walk toward the castle, each step echoing gently in the hush. The gates stand ajar, vines curling through the candy walls like forgotten thoughts reclaiming their place. Inside, the halls gleam faintly with the last remnants of invention. Vials of liquid moonlight, glass jars containing the laughter of children long gone, gears that turn for no purpose but remembrance. He moves slowly, reverently. His footsteps sound like the turning of pages in a sleeping library. When he reaches the throne room, he finds it empty, save for a single glowing sphere resting where Bubblegum once sat. It pulses softly, like a heart too tired to continue. He approaches, kneeling before it.
"Hey," he says quietly.
"I'm sorry it took me so long." The light flickers, responding weakly. He doesn't know if it recognizes him, if she recognizes him, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that something still listens. Pause. Finn closes his eyes and begins to hum. The same melody he once sang by campfires, the tune that used to make Jake laugh. A simple song without heroism or grandeur, just a heartbeat in musical form. The sphere trembles. Its glow strengthens, faint ripples of pink and gold flowing outward. The castle walls hum in resonance, as if remembering the feeling of life. Outside, a faint crack appears in the horizon. Not a break of destruction, but of dawn. Finn keeps humming, the sound weaving with the silence until both become one. The air fills with the scent of sugar and soil, of renewal. He feels warmth touch his cheek, delicate, like the breath of someone waking from a long dream. Then he hears her voice again. This time, clearer, closer. "You came back." Finn looks around, but there is no one. Only the shimmering air vibrating with emotion.
"I guess I never really left," he says. "Just
Fell asleep. And now you're awake." The light of the sphere rises gently, unraveling into ribbons of color that sweep through the room, touching every shadow. The caramel pillars glisten once more, the crystal chandeliers bloom with soft flame, and the air fills with the sweet sound of life returning. Outside, dawn finally breaks, hesitant at first, then radiant. The sun spills over the hills, melting the grayness into warmth. The dew turns to gold. The candy kingdom glows like a memory finally remembered. Finn steps outside, feeling the light on his skin. It is softer than he remembers, not the fierce light of battle or victory, but the tender warmth of understanding. He turns to see the world awaken. Blades of grass straightening, rivers stirring, the wind remembering its song. And somewhere, faintly, laughter returns. Distant, joyful, fragile as glass. He smiles. For the first time in what feels like centuries, he feels peace. Pause. The world does not need him to fight monsters or save kingdoms. It needs him to see, to listen, to remember that even the quietest moments matter, that the smallest act of kindness, even unrecorded, can summon the dawn. As the sun rises higher, Finn sits beneath a sugar maple tree. He watches the light play across the branches, tracing golden lines like forgotten letters. He wonders how many worlds exist, how many other versions of him might still be asleep, waiting to understand what he now feels. Maybe somewhere there is a Finn who saved Bubblegum. Maybe somewhere else she saved him. Maybe, in truth, every story is the same, just love finding its reflection through different mirrors. He leans back, eyes half closed, the warmth of dawn soaking into his bones. The kingdom hums softly around him, alive once more. He whispers a thought that feels ancient, yet new. Even if I never saved her, she still saved me. Through the dream of who she was. Pause. The wind carries his words away,
scattering them like seeds across the landscape.
The sun lifts fully above the horizon, and for a long moment the world is silent, not empty, but fulfilled. It is not the same dawn that once rose over Ooo, but something gentler, a dawn that remembers both the joy and the sorrow of all that came before. Finn breathes deeply, eyes drifting closed. The warmth lulls him into stillness, and the world seems to exhale with him, content, alive, balanced once again between waking and dream. Pause. And somewhere, in that delicate balance, the story waits to turn its final page. Next comes the chapter of return, where the dream of light meets the memory of night, and Finn learns what it means to awaken completely. The day rises gently over the reborn kingdom. Pause. The light does not crash in triumph, but tiptoes across the land as if afraid to startle it. Rivers gleam like silk ribbons unfurled, and the air hums faintly with sugar and sap, the scent of life remembering itself. Finn stands at the edge of a hill overlooking the Candy Kingdom, his hair glinting with the newborn gold of dawn. The silence feels different now, not the emptiness of loss, but the calm that comes after weeping. He closes his eyes and listens. Beneath the wind and the rustling grass there is something deeper, a heartbeat pulsing through the earth. It is slow, patient, steady. The world, he realizes, is breathing again as Finn begins to walk. His boots press softly into the soil, each step stirring faint sparks that rise like tiny fireflies. He passes through the candy fields where stalks of sugarcane sway with the rhythm of his heart. The path leads him toward the tree fort, or what remains of it. The branches are thinner now, like tired arms reaching for something they once held. The house itself leans slightly, its door ajar. Inside, time has been kind. Dust motes drift through sunlight, and the air smells faintly of old adventures. Breadcrumbs, rainwater, and laughter. Finn's fingers brush the wooden walls, tracing grooves carved long ago, symbols of quests, initials, and secret marks he and Jake made when they thought the world would last forever. He sits on the old couch and exhales slowly. The fabric sighs beneath him.
"Hey, buddy," he says softly, though Jake isn't there. "I saw the dawn." The silence holds him gently.
Like an old friend, he looks at the empty chair beside him, and for a moment it feels like Jake might still appear, stretching lazily, cracking a joke, humming off-key. But no one comes, only the sound of wind moving through the window. Yet somehow it is enough. Pause. Everything's changing, Finn murmurs. even when I'm not there to change it. He leans back, watching sunlight dance on the ceiling. Maybe that's the point, he says, almost smiling. Maybe the world keeps writing itself, even without me holding the pen. Outside, the forest rustles with quiet activity. Small creatures dart through the underbrush. The rivers murmur softly. The kingdom, once frozen, is now alive in slow, graceful motion. It feels different. Not restored to its former glory, but transformed. The kind of peace that comes not from fixing, but accepting. Finn stands and steps outside again, following the path deeper into the woods. Each leaf that brushes his shoulder feels like a whisper. Familiar, yet older somehow. The trees are taller, the colors softer, the air heavier with memory. He walks until he reaches a clearing where the grass glows faintly in the sunlight. At the center stands a stone altar, old, covered in moss and petals. Upon it rests a crystal shard, pulsing faintly with rose-colored light. Finn approaches, feeling a strange pull in his chest. It is the heart of Ooo, not a physical heart, but a living echo of every bond, every act of love, every story ever told here. He places his hand upon it, and the world opens. Pause. Visions unfold, gentle and slow, like memories replaying in dreamlight. He sees Bubblegum smiling in her lab, hands stained with pink resin. Marceline playing her bass by a moonlit lake, her song rising through the night. Flame Princess laughing beside a campfire. Ice King gazing up at falling snow with soft, lonely wonder. Then he sees Jake, sprawled on a cloud, grinning at him with lazy warmth. "You always overthink it, bro," Jake says, his voice echoing through the space between dreams.
You think saving people is about battles and monsters.
But saving people is just about showing up, Finn laughs softly.
I know, man, Jake shrugs.
Then why are you still wandering around like you're lost? Finn looks down at the crystal, its light glowing between his fingers.
Maybe I just needed to remember what I was saving. Jake's grin widens.
And he fades into the shimmering horizon of when the vision dissolves. Finn finds himself still standing by the altar, his hand pressed to the pulsing stone. The forest around him is silent, reverent. The light within the crystal has grown brighter. Not blinding, but alive, like the glow of a sleeping creature stirring awake. He feels warmth flow through his arm, spreading across his chest, filling him with an ache, both heavy and sweet. The heart of Ooo remembers him, and in turn, he remembers it. All its strange corners, its absurd joys, its impossible love. He realizes that the world never needed him to be perfect or even present.
It only needed him to care. He kneels by the altar, bowing his head. Thank you, he whispers,
for letting me come home. The light flickers gently, almost as if nodding as hours pass. The sun climbs higher, spilling its warmth across the clearing. Finn lies on the grass, feeling it soak into his skin. He can hear the hum of insects, the distant chime of wind through the trees, the faint heartbeat of the crystal echoing beneath it all. His thoughts drift like clouds. He wonders what becomes of a hero who stops saving the world. What becomes of a world that learns to save itself? Maybe both simply rest. Maybe this, he thinks, is what peace really means. He rolls onto his side, gazing toward the path that leads back to the Candy Kingdom. He knows he'll return soon. Not to fight, not to rebuild, but to share the quiet truth he's found, that sometimes the most powerful act is stillness. The wind carries the scent of sugar blossoms and rain. He smiles faintly. Guess the dawn was worth waiting for, he says aloud, though no one hears him but the trees. And then, from far away, he feels something stir. A ripple in the air, soft and musical. The world's heartbeat quickens for just a moment. A voice rises, distant yet clear. "Finn!" He sits up, blinking.
It's not Jake this time, nor a memory.
The sound is bright, like sunlight on glass. A voice he knows too well. Bubblegum. Her tone is not commanding or cold, but tender. The sun's up. Time to wake. Finn closes his eyes and lets the sound linger.
Maybe she's real.
Maybe she's only the dream of her that lives in the world's heart. Either way, he smiles.
Yeah, he whispers. Time to wake. Pause. The forest glows around him.
The wind stirs the grass. And for a moment, Finn feels as though he is both dreaming and awake. As though he is every version of himself at once. The boy with the sword. The wanderer of lost worlds, the quiet listener. The dreamer who never stopped believing in dawn. He stands slowly, gazing at the shimmering horizon. The world stretches endlessly before him, beautiful, imperfect, alive. He breathes it in, feeling it settle deep within his chest. He is home. And as the light deepens,
as the day blooms fully into being, Finn begins walking again, not toward destiny,
but toward understanding. The world exhales in golden quiet. Pause. The sun has reached its gentle height, resting in the middle of the sky like a slow-beating heart. The air above Ooo is soft, as if woven from silk and memory.
Nothing rushes.
Nothing cries for urgency. Even time itself seems to sway, half asleep under the spell of afternoon warmth. Finn walks barefoot through the meadows beyond the Candy Kingdom. Each blade of grass bends to his passing like an old friend bowing in recognition. Bees hum lazily among the clover. The clouds overhead drift like white ships across an endless sky. It feels different now, not like adventure, but like arrival. The ache that once filled him, that restless yearning for something more, has become something else entirely. A deep, gentle stillness, Ozd. He finds a quiet lake shimmering between the hills, its surface mirroring the heavens with perfect clarity. Sitting by its edge, Finn watches the ripples move across the water. Every reflection seems to hold a memory, laughter echoing in tree forts, the hum of Bubblegum's experiments, the warmth of Jake's laughter. But the images don't cling to him anymore. They move like clouds, here, then gone, and he lets them. For so long, Finn thought being a hero meant holding on. Holding on to the world, onto people, onto meaning itself. But as he gazes into the tranquil mirror of the lake, he realizes that letting go is not the same as losing. It is trusting that what matters will remain in one form or another. He dips his hand into the cool water. The ripples spread outward, distorting the sky, bending it until it resembles liquid glass. Beneath the surface, light glimmers, a strange, ethereal glow. He leans closer, and for an instant he sees something vast, not one world, but countless reflections of Ooo, spinning through eternity. In some, he stands as the hero who saved everyone. In others, he never lifted a sword, and in a few, he never existed at all. Yet all of them, he realizes, hum with the same heartbeat, the same note of love that binds everything together. Pause. The wind stirs gently, carrying with it a faint melody, a song without words. Finn recognizes it immediately. It is the song of the stars, the tune that played when the world was first dreamed. It hums through the trees, through the soil, through him. He lies back on the grass, eyes half open, watching the clouds drift.
I get it now, he whispers to the sky.
It was never about saving anyone. It was about remembering that we all belong to the same dream. The wind answers softly, carrying laughter that might be Jake's, low, kind, infinite. Finn smiles. Yeah, man.
I hear you. He thinks of bubblegum, her mind sharp as glass, her heart hidden beneath layers of duty and science.
He imagines her somewhere, watching the same sky, perhaps feeling that subtle change in the air. Maybe across the thin veil of worlds, she senses him. Maybe that's enough, and he thinks of all those he's met. Flame Princess, Marceline the Ice King, the countless beings whose stories wove the strange, glittering fabric of Ooo, each one a note, a brushstroke, a heartbeat in the same great song. Pause. Finn rolls onto his side, resting his head against his arm. The sunlight warms his face. If I never saved her, he murmurs, then maybe the world saved itself by showing me what love really is. The grass whispers around him, bending in rhythm to his breath. The lake shimmers brighter, its light pulsing like the world's own lullaby. The air tastes faintly of sugar and sea salt, sweet and pure. He can feel the pull of sleep now, not the heavy kind, but the soft one that comes when a story knows it has reached its end.
His eyelids grow heavy.
The wind hushes. Somewhere, far away, he hears the faint toll of a bell. Not a warning, but a gentle invitation to rest. He smiles, letting his thoughts dissolve into the hum of existence. Pause. And then, as his eyes drift closed, he dreams again. He dreams of Ooo, but not as it was. Not a kingdom of candy and monsters and heroes, but as something purer. A dream shared between countless souls. A place where adventure never ends because it was never truly about endings at all. He sees himself walking beneath the pink trees, hand brushing the petals as they fall like snow. He sees Bubblegum laughing freely, without her crown. Jake lounging on a floating island of clouds, smiling as the stars drift past. Marceline strumming a lullaby beside a moonlit river. Even the Ice King sitting in the distance, quietly sketching in the snow. Content at last, to simply be. Everything shimmers with that peculiar light that exists only in dreams, both real and unreal, fleeting and eternal. The dream speaks to him not in words, but in feeling. Everything that ever was still is. Finn breathes the dream in like morning air.
Every color, every sound, every memory.
It feels endless, yet somehow small enough to fit within his chest. He sits once more beside the lake, in the dream and in reality, both. The reflection before him is not his face, but 1,000 versions of it, young, old, weary, laughing, asleep, awake.
He smiles at them all. Good night, he whispers.
Good night, Ooo. And with that, the dream folds around him, soft and infinite. The sun begins to set, and the world hums a final verse, a low, glowing note that settles gently into silence. The trees sway in rhythm, the lake mirrors the stars now rising, and the very air feels like it's singing him to rest. Pause. He closes his eyes. The world breathes with him one last time, in, out, slow and deep. The grass sighs. The rivers hum. The stars above shimmer brighter, like candlelight reflected in tears, and somewhere at the edge of all things, the storyteller's voice whispers, soft, calm, eternal. Even if the hero never saved the princess, the dream still remembers their love. And in that remembrance, the world will always find its dawn.